and did not fire a single shot, in spite of being under constant fire.
What? That's insane! I haven't forgotten about this series. Believe me, I have not forgotten about this series.
The Great Northern War, it seemed that Sweden was isolated by its enemies that would soon win the conflict. However, by the middle of 1702, it proved to be anything but, as Charles XII, the soldier king of Sweden, had defeated all of his initial opponents in battle and was close to total domination. As the Swedish victories mounted, so did her enemies' eagerness to dismantle the empire. Just as the King of Poland, Augustus II, was licking his wounds after the defeat at Klisov, the Russian bear came out of its winter slumber and began planning its next attack. The good news is that you don't need a time machine to
sponsor. Sponsor.
Very deep. Support our channel and experience real war in an epic.
I thought I skipped to the freaking
Epic War Thrones via the. Following the Battle of Klisov, the Swedish army advanced towards Krakow, while Augustus fled to Sandomierz. The governor of Krakow was unwilling to surrender his city without a fight. However, he changed his mind after a Swedish display of force in front of the city walls. A couple of weeks later,
what did they do?
Swedish army from Pomerania arrived in Krakow as well. Augustus, seeing the gravity of the situation, left Sandomierz with 4,000 cavalry and advanced towards Warsaw to retake it. He had hoped to call for another diet and gather military and financial support from the nobility. The diet did not go according to his plans though, as an increasing number of noblemen voiced their dissatisfaction with the fact that Augustus involved the Commonwealth in the war. Several noblemen even threatened to openly back Charles in the conflict. Growing more desperate, Augustus sent countless envoys to the Swedish king in the autumn of 1702. However, Charles would not accept any of the terms that were offered. Fearing that all of his offers to Charles would go unanswered, Augustus begged for the aid of his liege via the Electorate of Saxony, the Holy Roman Emperor. Leopold I acquiesced, though his motives were not as selfless as they seemed, as the treaty he offered Charles stipulated that Sweden and Poland would end all hostilities, and that all Saxon troops would leave to join the imperial army in the War of the Spanish Succession. The young king dismissed even this offer, as he was determined to defeat Augustus completely. By 1703, Augustus was forced to flee Warsaw again, while Charles continued consolidating his position in Poland. Although we have neglected this theatre of war for some time, it is time to return to Ingria and Estonia. As Charles turned southwards after the Battle of Narva, Tsar Peter was given some much-needed time to reinforce and improve the Russian army. Boris Sheremetev, the only Russian commander to have escaped after the Battle of Narva, was given command over the Russian forces in the north. Small raids into Estonia and Ingria were conducted regularly during 1701, but they were not decisive by any means. The first serious attempt to probe the Swedish defences in the area was made in September, when Sheremetev led a 7,000-strong army into Estonia. However, von Schlippenbach intercepted the Russian advance with a 3 times smaller army and defeated Sheremetev at Reuj. Sheremetev made another attempt with a much larger army under him and advanced into Estonia again in January 1702.
Let's talk about the Baltics for a second. Okay, I had a very interesting comment from one of my OG viewers who was watching me for quite a while actually, but he pointed out that very interesting what he said regarding the whole Baltics, especially that these countries are a modern day invention per se. Like, these countries were just they're like how do I explain it? Like, they were basically just made up, right? Like, yeah, they were made up. And the more that I think about this, and the more that I look at the Baltics, yeah, the only country that was around was freaking Lithuania. And I pointed this out actually in my Teutonic Order reaction, where Lithuania didn't even have its like modern borders. It had freaking everything else, like just a whole bunch of other places that modern Lithuania doesn't even have. And I was like, wait, that's crazy. So, you know, but he lovely guy pointed out that Samagitia basically just took the title of Lithuanians or something like along those lines. Because literally, like, all of Samagitia is literally just modern day, like the modern day country of Lithuania, right? I was like, wait, that's crazy. So like, what happened to the like original Lithuania, right? Because in that Teutonic Order reaction, you know, like the original Lithuania didn't even have, the only place that it had that modern day Lithuania has is Vilnius, right? But it didn't have it like anywhere else that modern day Lithuania had. So that right there was like mind-boggling. And you know, then there's Estonia and Latvia. It's like, you know, I know that these people, I know who the Balts are. Like, I know that Baltic people are like their own people, right? Like their own distinct people. However, it's really like mind-boggling that despite the Balts being their own people, they never really seem to have a country or a kingdom, or like this region has just been swapping back and forth between these powers: Sweden, Russia, Poland, you know. So that's just insane to me, really and truly.
Back, this time outnumbered 6-1, gave battle at Arestva and was forced to retreat after sustaining heavy casualties. After Arestva, the Russians faced almost no significant opposition in the area and were able to advance deep into Ingria. In the autumn of 1702, the main Russian army, under the command of Peter himself, reached the Swedish fort of Notbori. As the Russians had lost all of their artillery at the Battle of Narva 2 years prior, they made an extraordinary effort to replace their lost and outdated artillery pieces, even going as far as to melt down church bells for material.
Wow.
The new Russian artillery corps was quite effective. The Swedish garrison of Notbori,
yes, sir,
mounting a serious defense, was forced to surrender after heavy bombardment and continuous assaults. The Swedish commander gave Peter the key to the city, which symbolized that Notbori was the key to the Neva River. Peter, recognizing that as well, renamed the city to Schlüsselburg and placed it under the command of his most trusted general, Menshikov.
Schlüsselburg was founded as Ostrich Little Nut by the Novgorod Republic in 1323, but was captured by the Swedes in 1613. And was renamed Notburg, Nut Fortress. Huh. That's... wow, okay.
The siege, though relatively short, left the Russian army exhausted, and the Tsar's desire to repair and improve the fort gave them some time to recover. Charles was aware of the situation in the north. However, he did not see the Russian advances as a significant threat and continued pursuing his goals in Poland. As the campaigning season of 1703 began,
wow,
the Russian army left Schlüsselburg and advanced towards the mouth of the river Neva. The mouth of the river was guarded by a fort called Nienkens. Hearing that the Russian army was approaching, the Swedish garrison burned the fort to the ground. Peter the Great captured what was left of Nienkents on the 1st of May, and on the 27th,
Russian comeback,
found a new city there, Russia's future capital, St. Petersburg.
Origins of St. Petersburg. Oh, that's sweet. Oh, that's sweet. I thought that St. Petersburg, or what was gonna be like modern St. Petersburg, was founded after the Great Northern War, after Sweden ceded this region. I didn't know he founded this like in the middle of the war. That's wow.
Area city and the fortresses around it. Tens of thousands of serfs were forcefully brought to St. Petersburg. Along with them, Peter also invited many architects, engineers and shipwrights from Western Europe to help him build the city of his dreams. These extraordinary efforts seem to have paid off, as by 1704, St. Petersburg began sprawling outwards from the main fortress, and 2 new fortresses were built alongside it. There were several Swedish attempts at reconquering the city in the next few years. All of them were unsuccessful.
You know, speaking of St. Petersburg, I'm gonna go back here. Let's talk about St. Petersburg for a second, right? You know, I'll hear Ukrainian people say that, oh, like Russian people always love to say, oh, St. Petersburg, we have St. Petersburg, look at St. Petersburg, like St. Petersburg is like the cradle of like Russian culture. You know, I've seen Ukrainians like clowning Russian people on that, and that always blows my mind. Like they always say that, oh, like it's just imported culture. That's literally what Ukrainian people say. Like, oh, St. Petersburg is just nothing but imported culture. It's not actual Russian culture. Like the architecture, none of that is actual Russian architectural like culture, right? And I've seen them clowning like Russian people and making fun of Russian people for saying that, oh, there's nothing original about St. Petersburg, so they have nothing to be proud about, right? Bro, name me one city in Ukraine that Ukrainians that literally like Ukraine, like the country Ukraine, right? The modern country Ukraine built. Please. Or I should better say, name me a country that modern Ukraine likes to brag about built. Because I see like Ukrainians say, oh, look at Lviv. Lviv is so gorgeous. They like to use like Lviv to represent Ukraine, which is not even a Ukrainian city. Or I've seen some of them say, oh, Odessa. Oh my God, Odessa. Odessa is a Russian city. Like, what? Seriously, what? So it blows my mind how I'll see Ukrainians clowning Russians and making fun of Russian people for using St. Petersburg to proudly like represent Russian culture, Russian history, and you know, Russian architecture, and basically like the beauty of Russia. Like at least St. Petersburg was built by Russia, in Russia, started by a Russian. Okay, even if it had inspiration, like, dude, Europe took so much inspiration from France. And my France reactions, right? That's what I learned there. Gothic architecture was originally called French architecture. And literally so many Europeans would literally take inspiration from that. But that's still, you know, their country's respective architecture too. But I don't see nobody saying like, oh, that's not original, blah, 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 blah. Look at London. People talk about London all the time. With that logic, British people can't be proud of London and its architecture, right? Because it was heavily inspired off of things that weren't English in terms of cultural context and cultural architectural context, right? So I don't know. That's something. That's just like, bro, that's you know, at least Russians have a city that they can call their own. Ukrainians don't.
Back in Poland, Charles managed to obtain the support of enough of the Polish nobility to have Stanisław Leszczyński crowned as the new king. On the other hand, Augustus still mounted a significant resistance, as he controlled the majority of the Polish army. The Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth subsequently descended into chaos, as the Sandomierz Confederation, led by Augustus, and the Warsaw Confederation, led by Stanisław, began fighting a brutal civil war. Due to the chaotic nature of the conflict, forts and cities continuously changed hands between the two confederations and Sweden, and it's difficult to discern who controlled several parts of the Commonwealth at different points in time. In the summer of 1704, the Swedish fort of Narva fell to the Russian army, after a much more effective blockade and siege than 4 years earlier. It was at Narva that Peter signed a treaty with Augustus, granting the Saxon monarch significant subsidies, 12,000 Russian soldiers, and lands in Ruthenia in exchange for staying in the war. Over the next year, the Russians and Saxons had devised a strategy to defeat the Swedish army and expel Charles from Poland. The Grodno campaign, as it later became known, aimed to capture the Swedish forces in a pincer movement, with a three-sided offensive from Lithuania, Ruthenia and Saxony. Charles was not sitting idly either, and by the summer of 1705...
Notice how he's saying Ruthenia. Okay, notice how he's saying Ruthenia. He's not saying freaking Ukraine. He's not saying Ukraine, he's saying Ruthenia. This is literally what, like, was the actual name of Ukrainians. Okay, I swear I will say this until the day that I die. That was like, Ukraine just means borderland. Like, it was just a regional name. That name Ukraine, there was no cultural significance to the name. It was just a regional name that simply just means like frontier or borderland, whatever the hell you want to. It just means like at the edge. You're just at the edge between two freaking, you know, countries. Ruthenia, which by the way, like, Ruthenia is literally just, it's just the same. I keep on saying this, but I have to say it because people need to hear it, because new people will come and watch these videos. Okay, like, Ukrainians were originally called Ruthenians. Literally. And Ruthenian is literally just the same way of saying Russian. I'm not even kidding. Ruthenian just means Rus. It just means Rus person. Just like how you have the name Russia. Russia just means land of Rus. Literally. You have R-U-S, Rus, and the sh, you know, the I-A in English. Most people don't know that. The IA, in some case, just for accent purposes, the SIA, just to make it sound better, right? Because if I say Rusa, it sounds weird, right? Just for accent purposes, you know, they have the sh sound, so the extra S in the IA, that just means land. So the Rus is you have Rus, and then you have land. So literally, Rusland is literally the literal name of Russia in English. Most people don't know that. You have Prussia. Okay? Same logic. Prusland. Literally. Oh my god. And then, oh no, all of a sudden, like, no, Ukrainians are completely different from Russian people. I mean, they're the same freaking people. I don't care what people tell me, bro.
He had convinced the Diet in Warsaw to start working on a peace treaty and to crown Stanisław as king. as what was going on in Warsaw was seen as a possible catastrophe for Augustus's war effort, not to mention the fact that it represented a significant hit to his pride. He knew that he had to act quickly. A large Saxon cavalry force was sent to assault Warsaw and to stop the coronation of Stanisław. Augustus's reckless endeavour ended in a complete disaster, as the force was defeated by a much smaller Swedish army and its commander was captured.
Wow.
More, the Saxon commander also divulged the strategic intentions of Augustus and his allies, allowing the Swedes to thoroughly prepare for the upcoming Grodno campaign.
One of the great...
As the majority of Livonia and Estonia were under Russian control by the beginning of the campaign, the main Russian army, along with large Saxon and Polish-Lithuanian contingents, set up for winter quarters at the fort of Grodno in Ruthenia. They expected a quick victory over the Swedish army after the campaigning season of 1706 began. However, they did not even get the chance to try. Much like his predecessor, Gustavus Adolphus, Charles force marched his army in the dead of winter and arrived at Grodno on the 24th of January. Lacking the artillery to assault the fort, Charles opted to cross the frozen Neman River and blockade the city. Seeing that the young king was preparing to encircle them, Augustus immediately left with 5,000 men, hoping to reinforce his army in Saxony. Peter, unwilling to bring the rest of his army to relieve the siege, ordered Menshikov to leave the fort with the cavalry as soon as possible. Grodno fell in April, and the Russians lost more than a third of their initial force. They would have lost even more had Charles not misjudged the direction of Menshikov's retreat. Unable to pursue the Russian army through the thick marshlands of Polessia, Charles went westwards to seek a battle with the Saxons. As Charles was busy with the siege, Augustus had prepared to advance towards Warsaw. He led a 7,000-strong cavalry force, while the main body of the Saxon-Polish army was commanded by Schulenburg. A third Saxon army under Brauser was also advancing from Kraków. Schulenburg crossed the Oder on the 8th of February and advanced towards the town of Sława in Silesia. While this was taking place, Reinschild was resting in his winter quarters, which extended from Kostin to the border with Brandenburg. No sooner had he learned of the Saxon advance, he assembled his army and began marching towards the Oder. After discovering the movements of both Schulenburg and Brauser, Reinschild deduced that the two of them planned to avoid open battle with him and join forces at Poznan. To avoid any surprises, the Swedish commander retreated the same way from which he came, and made sure to spread the word at every town and village that he was retreating, and hoping to avoid open battle. Reinschild's information warfare proved successful, as Schulenburg gave credit to the rumors of a Swedish retreat, and decided to pursue the Swedish army instead of advancing towards Poznan. The Saxon general believed that the mere presence of his superior army would be enough to rout the Swedish force. With this strategy, Reinschild achieved two things. He drew Schulenburg's army away from any allied forces, and was able to choose a site of battle that was optimal for the Swedish army.
Yo! Holy! That is the smartest thing that I have probably reacted to. Yo! Holy shit! Yo, I'm stunned. Yo! Guys, I've reacted to so much. I've reacted to so much, bro. Like, yo, I'm honestly just astonished. Like, how smart that is. That has me lost for words, bruh. Big brain IQ. Wow.
Upon both armies,
what a genius.
On the 13th of February, Reinschild started arraying his army in battle formation. It was at this point that Schulenburg realized that he had been deceived, However, he had to give battle, as it would have been scandalous for him to retreat with such a superior force. The Saxon force was around 20,000 strong, with around 10,000
I don't know why that was funny. That was funny, bro.
And 4,000 Saxon cavalrymen. Schulenberg assembled his infantry into 2 columns, between the villages of Jägersdorf and Roosdorf, and in front of it he placed 31 cannons, 44 mortars, and a chevaux de frise. 2,000 Saxon horsemen were placed on either wing. Reinschild had only 9,400 men at his disposal, with 3,700 infantry and 5,700 cavalry. He placed his cavalry on the flanks, and the majority of his infantry in a single line in the centre, while some Karelians were also mixed in among the cavalry. Axel Sparre commanded the infantry in the centre, while Humahjelm led the left, and Reinschild himself was in charge of the right.
Let's talk about Karelians real quick, right? I see people talk about how, like, Russia owns Karelia, right? And people, like, say, oh, like, Karelia belongs to Finland, blah, 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 blah. Does it really matter? Like, does it really matter? It's like, because Karelians aren't the same as Finnish people. Finnish people, I can't pronounce what the hell they are, but Finnish people and Karelians are different. So I find it hilarious to me that people will say, oh, Karelia belongs to Finland, but Karelians aren't even Finnish. They're like their own distinct group of people with their own distinct language too. If I'm not mistaken. If I am wrong, you are free to correct me. But it's like, oh, because Russia owns the place, like, oh, it suddenly needs to be free or whatever. Like, what type of double, guys? And I said this in my Turkey reactions before, but some people don't watch all my reactions. Some people watch one specific type of reaction. So I'll say this here, because not everybody heard, you know, what I said in my Turkey reactions. You don't need, just because you're a distinct ethnic group, that doesn't mean you need a country. You can very much just be a part of a whole ass other country that wasn't founded by your ethnic group and prosper. You don't need, in some cases actually, like this whole, oh, we need our own ethno state. It's usually bad. In some cases, it usually turns out bad because it usually, a lot of times, it can turn out poor. It can turn out very corrupted and a whole other thing, right? So, you know, instead of, you know, just joining someone else's country, making it larger, which would, you know, bigger equal better, just to simplify things, like Russia. Russia's a federation, right? Russia has a butt ton of other ethnic groups in it because it's a federation with their own republics, technically their own country, but it's all a part of one country. Because why would you want to be your own country? Just group together. Like, it's better to be a group than to be just one whole single country. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, America's also a federation too. But the thing about America is I don't really... It's like, yes, America is a federation. But really and truly, if you live in America, America doesn't feel like a federation. Everywhere is the same. America has become so centralized after the American Civil War, which is funny because I see people say, oh, Russia has become extremely centralized in recent years, that it's not really a federation. Bro, I am telling you this. Come to America. You will see what centralization looks like. Every single state looks the damn same. There is no distinct culture. There are no peoples with like their own languages and whatnot. Like, they are, but They're so small. They're so small. It's just not even worth talking about. Like Native American reservations, right? Native American reservations, which are just a fancy way of saying ghetto, to be honest. There's a whole history behind that. I'm not going to talk about that here. I mean, but by law in the American Federation, they're like their own country, basically, right? If you step on a Native American reservation, it's like you adhere to their laws. But Native American reservations are so damn small. It's like you're not gonna step foot on a Native American reservation anytime, bro. Like, no. Like you're not. You're not. You're not. So, anyways, like Russia is more of a federation than America. I will stand by that.
As the Swedish army advanced, the Saxons waited until their enemies were at about 100 paces distance, then they fired all of their cannons and mortars. Although the Swedish army suffered some casualties during this barrage, they did not give the Saxons enough time for another one, as the centre and left started their charge. The Swedish centre's advance was at first checked by the Chevaux de Frise. However, after less than 15 minutes, the Swedish forces broke through. The Swedes, who were expertly trained at hand-to-hand combat, charged their Saxon counterparts with swords and did not fire a single shot, in spite of being under constant fire.
What? That's insane!
The ferocious Carolean onslaught forced the Saxons to retreat towards the village of Bezen. The Swedish wings had even more success.
They didn't fire, so they were just walking with swords. Yo, Sweden army, you have my respect.
As the numerically
Swedish army has my respect. I can't lie. I gotta respect that.
Several minutes of fighting. Only a handful of cavalry on the Saxon right, led by Colonel Kospot, mounted a desperate defense. However, they were surrounded and broken after the rest of their wing fell. The Swedish right afterwards came upon the 6,000 Russian soldiers. The Russians had their uniforms turned inside out, as Schulenburg knew that they were inexperienced and Reichschild would target them. Their weakness was revealed though. The Russians fired only one volley at the Swedes before throwing down their arms and retreating behind the wall of spikes. After removing the Chevaux de Frise there, Reichschild chased down the entire Russian force and massacred them all.
Damn.
As all of the Saxon cavalry had fled, their Swedish counterparts were now free to surround the remainder of the army on all sides. Much like Hannibal almost 2 millennia before him, Reichschild executed a double envelopment perfectly, forcing the remainder of the Saxon army to surrender. And with that, the entire Saxon army, raised with so much toil, care and expense, and which was twice the size of the Swedish army, had been defeated in less than an hour's time.
So today's the day.
The Saxons lost more than 7,000 men during the battle itself, and had almost all of the rest imprisoned, with the total losses amounting to about 15,000 to 16,000. The Swedes lost around 400 men, and also had around 1,000 men injured. Augustus's biggest problem, however, was that the road to Saxony now lay wide open and undefended. Augustus, who linked up with Brausa and had 12,000 men at his disposal, was only 80 kilometers away from Fraustadt when the battle took place. Shocked at the news of his Grand Army's complete defeat at the hands of an inferior Swedish force, Augustus hastily retreated to Krakow. Since Peter the Great was unwilling to send his army to even relieve the siege of Grodno, there wasn't any hope of Russian aid for them either. After his victory at Grodno, Charles XII turned west to prepare for the upcoming invasion of Saxony. In the next few months,
this man is so deep, bro. That's
Augustus desperately tried to negotiate a peace with Charles, even offering to split up the Commonwealth between himself and Stanisław.
What?
Began. The Swedish armies marched into Saxony and quickly occupied Leipzig. Without any other options, Augustus agreed to all Swedish demands and signed the Treaty of Elternstadt. According to the treaty, he would renounce all of his claims to the Polish and Lithuanian crowns, annul treaties with Russia, and extradite the Swedish traitor Johann Patkul. In order to humiliate his personal enemy, Charles also forced Augustus to congratulate Stanislav on his victory and coronation. In only 6 years, the young and capable Charles XII eliminated 2 of his 3 enemies. The time had finally come that he would turn his attention to Russia. The Great Northern War was entering its most critical stage. Our series will continue in the coming weeks.
That was mad. That was mad. If you like my reactions and you're new to my channel and you made it all the way here, make sure you subscribe, bruh. You know, check out my other reactions too, because I have a bunch of reactions like this, especially if you like my reaction. If you're an active member and you want your reactions to be done more quicker, guys, I have a channel membership. It's only 99 cents a month. Purposely made it cheap for my active viewers. Literally, like I'm telling you, if you are a channel member and you hear this, you can vouch for me when I say, like, you get more than what you pay. Like, it's crazy. I know it's so crazy, but it's only 99 cents a month, bruh, and it's super duper worth it. The perks are faster reactions to comments, your suggestions are done much more quicker, access to members week, more more insight on what's going on in the background regarding my channel, like how my channel is going to be, etc, etc. There's a whole bunch of perks. Like I said, the more members I get, the more I'm going to expand the perks. Right now we have like 6 members, right? Anyways, bruh, thank you to the members who did join, and thank you for watching, and goodbye.